I think it's very much a budget that is preparing for the worst and yet hoping for the best. But there are a few issues that I want to pick up on. And look, we can all highlight weaknesses in the budget, and I think, all of us would like to see far more money going into services. But I think there are a number of elements to this budget that I think need to be highlighted, because they provide an opportunity for communities across the country with good ideas and solutions to actually come forward with constructive proposals that can be developed into very beneficial schemes, not just for those communities, but for the country as a whole. And I welcome the fact that the funding of €31 million has been put in place for the Midland counties in terms of dealing with the challenge that we have with regard to Bord na Móna. In particular, I welcome the funding of €6 million for the Just Transition. And people will argue that it's insufficient funding, and I would agree with them in relation to that. But it is seed capital now to support communities across the Midland counties who can come forward with good, innovative solutions to create jobs across the Midlands and have those hopefully developed into initiatives that can leverage funding from the European Commission or other funding through either the Urban or the Rural Regeneration Fund. I also welcome the fact that this particular budget acknowledges the issue in terms of remote working, because while in the past we have paid lip service to this issue, the fact is that the IDA has continued to pile more jobs into the City of Dublin where there isn't the capacity to cater for them. And yet in many communities across the country where the office accommodation is there, where the housing accommodation is there, we cannot get those particular jobs. And in the budget announcement, there is an allocation of funding to establish 300 rural digital hubs across the country, I think 7 on average in every county across the country, which allows communities and allows individuals to remote work. And it would actively encourage companies and businesses based here in Dublin to see how they can exploit those digital hubs to relocate staff that are from rural parts of the country and the regions to relocate back to those communities. And I think a significant step that was taken, and I know my colleague Minister Boxer-Morden is someone who advocated as well, is in terms of remote working for the civil service. And the Minister for Finance in his speech acknowledged that a review will now commence with regard to that. And I think the first area that needs to be looked at is the vacant state-owned office accommodation across the country, to see if staff can be located in those particular locations rather than having to develop new accommodation. And I look in terms of the opportunities that are there, and I give an example of my own county town of Roscommon Town, where we have thousands of square footage of commercial office space at the moment that is ready, turnkey office space that is ready to be accommodated and accommodate business tomorrow morning. And I would encourage business that are looking at expanding, rather than trying to build and source new office accommodation here in Dublin. There are opportunities in provincial towns like Roscommon and many other provincial towns across the country using the tools of remote working. And I think government now, to actually capitalise what they have announced in the budget, needs to bring a task force together, not just of the state bodies, but all the expertise across the economy that could look at how we can actually incentivise and support business, provide them with the knowledge and know-how to encourage remote working across the country and give a substantial boost to communities. The final point that I want to make is in terms of the agriculture sector. I think there's two significant announcements that were made yesterday in terms of agriculture. First was the €3 million fund that's been put in place for new agri-environmental schemes. And yes, people can dismiss it and say €3 million is insufficient to put any type of an agri-environmental scheme in place. But I think it is a blank canvas for farmers now to come forward with solutions on how you could develop an agri-environmental scheme that supports farming, that supports farm incomes, rather than what has happened heretofore, where it's been the environmentalists that have created hoops and hurdles for farmers to jump through. And I would actively encourage the farming communities across the country to look and see how they can develop this. Again, the same issue arises in relation to the €40 million fund of targeted supports for the beef sector, and I would actively encourage the beef representative groups across the country to come forward now with proposals on how that funding can be drawn down in an innovative way to support beef farmers and particularly suckler farmers across the country, rather than letting the officials in the Department of Agriculture design a scheme that meets the administration objectives rather than the objectives of communities across this country. Thank you.